Welcome to a new limited podcast series called Car Diary by Hobbyist Thompson, where I invite you to join me on my cardboard journey as I try different ways to enjoy the trading card hobby as a jack of all trades and a master of none in the style of Hunter S. Thompson. Whether you're a beginner or advanced hobbyist, I hope that you will allow me to be your guide into various corners of the sports card and non sports card world while I share my thoughts and opinions in this podcast medium, and also to have guests who have actual expertise and knowledge to share so that we can all learn and grow together. The Car Diary by Hobbyist Thompson. Presented, written, produced, directed, edited, and narrated by Denny Cards.
Oh my gosh. That was from episode 1, prologue, May 25th, 2023, 6:28 p.m. This is not episode 1. This is episode 100. And welcome to The Car Diary by Hobbyist Thompson. Episode 100. When I started this back in May, I didn't think I would be saying that. As you heard from that intro, I really did plan for this to be a limited podcast series. When I pitched it to some people to be under their podcast network umbrellas, I really was imagining like 12 episodes with each one taking on a different aspect of the hobby and me just trying it and me interviewing someone. Maybe it would be 12 times 2, 24, something like that. And now we're at episode 100. And I am recording this the week between Christmas and New Year's. I apologize for my voice. I think I still have a lingering cold, but I didn't want to wait until I've been putting this on. I have been putting this off for a very long time. Well, not a very long time. Hobby, very long time. Which is like, a week in the hobby is like a month in real life. Um, have you ever dragged your feet? Like we all have, right? I mean, why am I even asking this question? You got to get something done, but you don't want to do it because you know that when you do it, it's over. So, and there's no actual time frame, no timeline. No one's telling me I have to get 100 episodes done by the end of 2024 as we head into 2025. But I also knew that episode 100 is coming up for a while, and I even prolonged it because I wanted to squeeze in an extra like breaker episode, and I called it 99 and a half, which is arguably already episode number 100. So this is episode 101 in a way. But I I felt that way about this episode and recording it because up until about maybe a few days ago, so like I mean really we're talking like the holiday, right in the throw of it, during Christmas while being sick. I mean, just I don't know. But I really thought that this could be the last episode of this podcast. And don't worry because, well, for those of you who did worry for a brief second, it's not going to be the last episode, and I'm going to get into those reasons in this centennial episode, whatever you want to call it. But I, as avid long-term listeners know, I never cut straight to the chase. I think that's the beauty of podcasts and of long form and of long drawn out thoughts. Some people could call it boring. I totally understand that. And so for those of you who've been listening for all this time, thank you. You must be into a lot of interesting, fun content. So thank you for listening to this one. So, again, if you are listening to this during the holiday season, happy holidays. But I guess according to social media, we can go back to saying Merry Christmas. So Merry Christmas to you all. And also, of course, those of you who celebrate, Happy Hanukkah as well, and all the other religious observances. But yes, happy holidays to everyone. And if you are listening to this after the holiday season, hope you enjoyed a wonderful holiday season. So this episode, The title I wanted to call it is, episode 100. It's just the number, because 100 is a nice round number. Like wow, 100, right? It's a milestone. But as we were getting closer to it, I was thinking a lot about this achievement, and because it's a milestone, it's an achievement. And I was like, you know what? Like, let me look up how many podcasts get to 100 episodes. And I couldn't find that answer. There was no, I don't know. I'm sure Apple or Spotify, they have their numbers. And actually, they do have these numbers. And I'm about to share some numbers with you. But they didn't have a number for like 100, at least what I could tell. And I know there are a bunch of like podcast analytic programs. I just don't have any of those. I will say, from a operating cost standpoint, I have a paid, like one of the lower tiers for StreamYard to do this podcast. I realize you don't have to. You could do it for free. But I have the paid version, which is like $20 a month, which I should try to recoup in like, sponsorships, which have been kind of on and off for this podcast, which, I appreciate the people who have. Um, but this episode is not sponsored and like that. And hopefully that can change in the future as we go along with this podcast, which I will explain. Having said that, I I already lost my train of thought. I looked into the numbers of the podcasts, and interestingly, episode 21 should be more impressive than episode 100. And why is that? And that is because um, when the listens were barely cracking the low teens and then the high teens, like incrementally, little by little, person by person, whether it was word of mouth or people searching on Spotify or Apple, um, I I just kept going, right? But why specifically episode 21? So I saw on Reddit, and again, I think this is based on like the Apple Pro, analytics, but apparently 2 million podcasts have been created from scratch, which sounds like a crazy number. But apparently, out of those 2 million, 90% of podcasts don't get past episode 3. Okay, so that's 90% of 2 million is 1.8 million. So you minus out those 1.8 million. Then you get to 200,000. With the 200,000 remaining, 90% of them will quit after 20 episodes. So 90% of 200,000 is 180,000, meaning there's 20,000 left after 20 episodes. Again, whether that's weekly, daily, monthly, I don't know. But again, these are just numbers that I saw on Reddit, and everything you see on the internet is 100% true. But apparently, this means if the math works and everything's correct, 90%, and then another 90%, to be in the top 1% of podcasts in the world, you only need to publish 21 episodes of a podcast. And the final thing that they say, I don't know if it's like supposed to be inspirational, but wait one moment. Try my best to mute so I don't cough into the mic. Your competition is not the 2 million podcasts, it's the 20,000 podcasters who didn't quit. And then an additional thing I found online was that most podcasts fail within the first few episodes, often not making it past the first 10 episodes due to a lack of consistency in production and a failure to build a dedicated audience early on. 21 also happens to be my lucky number, worn by greats such as Tim Duncan, KG. It's also red 21 on the roulette wheel back when I used to go to casinos more in my 20s, not so much in my 30s, rarely, if ever, in my 40s. Um, I guess for me to build that dedicated audience, I did have a little leg up than maybe someone starting completely from scratch. I did have a social media presence, and I imagine a lot of these podcasters also do have some sort of social media presence, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. For me, it was primarily Instagram. I do have accounts, but barely any presence on Facebook and TikTok and whatever people do nowadays. But you know, I I think that it wasn't just that, it was just yeah, just keeping up the momentum, doing it weekly, and then I kinda fell off doing it weekly, and I think that this podcast could be better and could be stronger if I did keep to a more consistent basis. For not doing so, I really do apologize to the listener. I know some people have their set routines when it comes to a weekly or a daily, like some people like they schedule the podcast come out every single Tuesday morning or Friday morning, or like your Monday morning commute and all this stuff. And I only, not recently, but like halfway through, I realized, oh, I can schedule it, and I should have a better scheduling format. I have been flying by the seat of my pants for this entire thing. I've been learning things here and there, but when it comes to my Instagram, my podcasting, um, I'm learning, and I think I'm getting better at it little by little. But I'm also, again, that's the whole Hobby S. Thompson thing. It's like when you're a jack of all trades and you're a master of none, that could, I'm sure, frustrate people who try to rely on you for those certain things, or like want to see more consistency. I think for my YouTube, I've been trying to do that more. And so I think with this whole motif or theme of try everything, I've realized what I like doing and what I don't like doing. So, just real quick with the Hobby S. Thompson, Hunter S. Thompson, gonzo journalism, try everything, embed yourself with people who do things and learn from them. I realized I like podcasting, I like interviewing. I just don't have as much time for it sometimes, but yes, I do like it. The flip game in the hobby, I'm kind of 50-50 on it. Like I get it. Like I think I could be good at it if I put more time into it. I feel like a lot of this stuff, we could say that about any of this. Any of us could say it. Like, if I put more time into this, I can get better at that. Of course you could. But setting up as a vendor, I don't think I like it as much. I think that I really like being mobile and flexible at a show and not just tethered to one spot. Um, and so I think that I'm realizing things that I'm better at or I like more than others. I love going to card shows. I love the atmosphere. I love the energy. I love talking to people. I love interviewing people there and getting to know the card show promoters and the vendors. All that. That's wonderful. YouTube long form. I've liked that. Um, Grading and cleaning cards. I can't remember the last time I even cleaned a card. Uh, n- the more it became, I don't know, morally ambiguous, or the more I was being influenced by people who aren't influencers, but the more I was kind of being like not like shamed for doing it, but like I was like, you know what, is this really good for the longevity of the cards, and is this really the right thing to do, or is this really just to maximize the value, and like, you know is this really like restoring a card or a car or a painting or a, and then you got the pressing of the magazines, you got like all these different rules, and I don't know. All I know is it got to be too much of a headache for me, and more of maybe say like a moral conundrum for me to continue to want to do it. Have I graded cards? Sure, I still grade, but I don't have a membership to Collectors Club with PSA anymore. I'm gonna try to submit through GameStop and other ways, and just try that. Um, and I don't know. eBay sales, they're kind of 50-50. Like there are times when I really like listing things on eBay, and then other times I'm like, I am just absolutely grinding for like a 90-cent victory, or like eking out not even like 10% margins, but like less than that. So I don't know how much I love that. But I love the psychology of auctions. I really find that aspect. So, the purest form of getting to know card value is an auction. But of course, the thing that is really, truly unfortunate about this hobby is the shill bidding, which is, if these billion-dollar corporations can't figure it out, I don't know what we can do as a hobby, right? I mean, I don't think this is a hobby community thing. I mean, sure, we can root out all the bad actors as best as we can, but when the platforms such as, the largest online card marketplace, having known shill bidders continue to sell on the platform, I don't know. I don't know where we're going to be as a hobby, or all that stuff. That said, I know my eBay presence could be better too. So anyway, Um, yeah, that was the whole concept of this podcast. And being a memer, Instagrammer, like, whatnot streamer, all this stuff. Like, I'm not gonna sell on whatnot. I'll just be straight up. Like, that's I feel like the most uneducated buyers are on whatnot, and I just don't want to. I would feel bad streaming on whatnot. And there's nothing against people who stream on whatnot and are honest, reputable sellers, but like it really is like driving an Uber. Anyone can apply, so long as you're not like a criminal. And actually, some people who are criminals, you can, and even kids. Apparently, like, I don't know, they're supposed to have minor age restrictions, but there are kids who are streaming on whatnot, and they're fine with it. So it is the true wild wild west, and I just don't want to be, I don't know, in a way complicit with all of that. So I um I realized that when you do get really good at what you do, and I'm not just talking about me, I'm talking about anyone who does something really well, whether it is you listening right now, whether you are a really good whatnot streamer, whether you're a really good eBay seller, whether you're a really good podcaster, vendor, and all that. Um, you do. This is the thesis, and I don't really like that word, but I'm going to use it here because after 100 episodes, I feel like I've realized this whole hobby S Thompson concept, what it all comes down to. Well, I don't want to distill it down to this one thought or this one thesis, but what I've realized is when you get really good at something, you do become a threat to the people who are in that niche or space or industry or whatever it is that they're doing. If that if and it's not everyone, I don't, my thesis is not that I truly believe that every single person is going to be feel threatened, but it's the people who are feeling inadequate, who lack confidence, people who start doing the comparison game, people who see you rising up and trying to make a name for yourself. They, if they are not confident in their own uh, actions, and they are just not really sure of it, and they have this core sense of um, something's missing, then they can take their inadequacies out on you. And I've seen that in the content creation space and on Instagram. I've seen it on social media. I've seen it as even like, I don't even think that this is I would say maybe moderately successful hobby podcast, but I've seen it in these different spheres. I haven't seen it in the vendor space because I just haven't been a very good vendor. eBay store. I mean, that's just, I'm a drop in the bucket, not even a drop, like half of a drop of a bucket in the eBay bucket. But I do truly believe that when you keep rising in your skill level and your, let's say your not rank, it's not like leveling up in like a RPG, but as you keep getting better and you have a bigger presence, I think that there are some people who have uh well, there's two different type of mentalities. There's the scarcity mentality and the abundance mentality. Scarcity mentality, people are the people who think that here's the pie, and when you start taking away a slice of the pie, you're taking away a slice of their pie. Like the market share is just fixed, and wow, like it's binary. If you win, that means I lose. Abundance mentality and mindset is, wow, so glad you're here. We're going to grow together. There's enough for everyone. The pie doesn't have to be static. The pie can grow. I can grow. You can grow. Let's collaborate. Let's do things together. And I have found people of both mindsets within this hobby. And I mean, I'm gonna get to the guests soon too, but there's some people I don't talk to who are guests in the hobby. Who are guests on this podcast. And I wish nothing but the best for every single person who's been on this podcast as a guest, solo pod, group pod, and the overwhelming majority are excellent, and they have abundance mentalities. That said, when you interview, um, what's the final number? Like around 40. Is it 40? Oh man, I had it somewhere. 40 solo podcasts and 9 group pod guests, not podcasts or podcast guests. 49 people. There's going to be some bad apples in the bunch, right? So, again, for me, bad apple. For them, everyone's the protagonist in their own stories and all that. But I very much thank every single person who's been on this podcast, and I'm gonna get to those names, and I'm not gonna speak about every single person. I'm certainly not gonna say anything bad about any of these people because there's nothing to gain from doing that. But I definitely want to say every person's name and thank them, and I'll reach out to some of them about episode 100 and what they meant to me on a on a personal level. But we're already 20 minutes in. Time really flies when you're recording these things. I know that there are some really good, decent people in this hobby that I've gotten to meet. Interestingly enough, I feel like the most decent people are the ones who are like have no social media presence, who just are having fun and they don't know about any of the. I don't even like using the word drama. I feel like the people who use the word drama are the most dramatic, but that's a whole nother story. But I feel like when it comes to the actual, and it doesn't have to be pure collector. That's another term I'm not really. It's like Hogwarts, like pure Muggle blood, mud blood, Muggle blood, all that stuff. Um, but it's the people who are just kind of like ripping the occasional retail and hobby wax, who buy things online, maybe sell things on eBay as well. But they're not into all the kind of like Instagram, current events, news. They could care less, or maybe if they, uh, if they know, they could care less. But sometimes they don't even know. But they just kind of like have fun, and they're okay with it being like what it is, a true hobby, and it's not a business. Most people I know, even if it is a business to them, they I guess they try to have some semblance of a PC. There are some people I know who the cards mean absolutely nothing to them other than a value proposition. And those aren't necessarily the worst people either. There are some people who are very transactional, who are very fair and kind as well. But I will say again, if you do anything well, whether it is in the hobby or out, the more you meet people who are um I don't know, just unsure of themselves, the more friction you may encounter because it's just again, you just naturally become a threat in their eyes. So having said all that, I wanted to say that um this is this is the time when I figure, or when I'm trying to figure out, do I take a break or not? um Let me power through. All right, let me power through. Where does this all lead us? Um, I'm going to talk about the direction of this podcast, but I will very much say that I was thinking maybe this is the end. I thought that maybe the style or format was getting a little stale, the numbers getting stagnant. But again, who cares about the numbers? They're just numbers, right? So I do think it's important to put your time and energy into things that you like, collect what you like, consume what you like, do what you like, all of that, right? Just do what you like. um I guess even if that's trolling and hate listening. But I feel that i really I like trying different things, but I also lack that consistency, even though it's weird saying that because I'm at 100 episodes, but it also took me a year and a half to get here. I could have been more consistent. I could have scheduled my podcast to come out every, Tuesday morning on a weekly basis. It's hard sometimes to get these podcasts going. I've battled. I've tried to, power through being sick, and even right now, like I'm like still a little bit clogged up, but I'm trying to push through with this 100th episode, and I just feel as if it's like I try so hard, and yet sometimes it's not even enough. I also truly believe it's because I have so many different things I'm doing in the hobby, whether it is, like trying to sell on eBay online, create content, go to shows, be a show ambassador, do this, do that, help out this person, help out that person, and like there's so many things that to do in this hobby, and that's why I love it. It's like if I get bored of doing one thing, I could just go to another thing. But what I realize is you don't you're not consistent enough to be more successful. So I feel like I'm pretty good at like a bunch of things, but just not like, again, podcasting. Thank you for people who've been listening to me try to do this podcast when I know that I could be so much better if I just kept doing this more regularly. But I feel like I have been growing. I feel like I've been a better interviewer with better questions, which I've derived from the community. I feel that the I think it's really important to listen as a podcast interviewer. Um, I think it's the people who have come onto this podcast. It's just been I've been so impressed and amazed and appreciative. So let me just go through this list real quick. Okay, so we started off with Dan Wynn, the great curator. Then we went to, and this wasn't, I intermingled or I intermixed these guests throughout solo episodes. But let's just go real quick. Dan, Brian Pirrip, Nick Sostak, David Spinrad, Jason Hickey, Keen, Daryl Garner, Blake Grice, Jesse, not JC, Jesse Rhodes, Courtney Reckless, Rob Gerard, Ryan from Gemrate. And I should have said their tags too. I'm sorry, but I think for some people you know who they are, but like say Rob Gerard, he hasn't been in the hobby for a while now, so I'll just say that's a sports card therapist. Blake Grice is Blake Down. Jesse Rhodes is sports card nonsense. Daryl Garner's Dr. Collectible. So Ryan from Gemray, Craig from Forensic Card Grading, Eddie from C3 Grading, Sophia from CGC Cards, Sean from Card Boss, Aaron from AGS Robo Grading, Ezra Levine from Mascot or with Mascot, Jim Doyle, Doyle 11 cards. And so that's like 19 up to that point. Then we had a repeat with Dan, the great curator again. Then we had Alex Tressler, Hobby Outsider, TK, Jonathan Rotunda from Roto Breaks, Matt from Ultimate Sports Breakers, and then we had Jesse again, Dan again. So I'm not counting the multiple appearances when I say 40, almost 50 people. But we got Jesse again, Dan again, Ryan again. We got Neo Cards and Comics, which Rapt tells me was your favorite guest, at least from the number of listens. And so, and there's a lot of people in here that I would love to have on again. But then again, talking about like, how much do I want to continue this format, and what different things I want to try with this podcast. But we have Valor Sports Cards, YZ Official, Sarah Mrs. Squirt, Steven from Filth Bomb, TA24 Cards, Nick from Break Comps, Cage Lawyer, Tom Ferreira, who is Pancake Analytics, David, who doesn't have Instagram, who I set up as a new dealer in uh, North Carolina. We have Clark from Five Card Guys, Bailey Fire Sports Cards, Raphael Prism. I'm sorry, Joyce Prism Goddess and Raphael Prism God, Tommy the Card Carver, and then we had Roundtable. So those solo podcasts that I mentioned, there's 40 of them, and I know I just said your name. I didn't say anything like, uh, you know, it would take me forever if I did that, but I want to say thank you to every single person. And some of the people who I mentioned, they actually like this podcast and they listen to it. So extra thank you. But this is for the most part, this is a fantastic group. I mean, really, like I said, like there's some people who want in this list who I guess I won't even get into the reasons why they might not like me, but they don't like me. They want to talk ill of me. It's all good. It's all love. I don't want to bring that stuff into 2025. I want to leave it back in 2024 as much as I can. But I just do want to say, regardless of my current status or what you think of me or what windmills you're fighting in your own head about me, thank you for being on the podcast at the time that you are. Then we have three roundtables, the latter of which, and last but not least, Nick Andrews, Boston Card Hunter. He was the 40th guest, and at the time of recording I thought he could be the last one. um and Ryan McCormick. Yes, Mid Atlantic. So those are the 40. Sorry, my notes are all over the place here. The three roundtables, I had a regional card show roundup, people who've been to multiple card shows. I want to do more roundtables. Zach, Collector Creative, Gavin, 631, Sports Cards, Rob, Collector's Choice Cards. Those are the three that came on. We had a great chat. That was my first time ever doing it. I don't know why it took me a year and a half to figure out why don't I just do a roundtable. Second one was Fanatics Collect Orlando and the cancellation and just after the podcast aired, there was a lot of fallout about that. But again, just the people who are trying to use the excuse of the hurricanes, it was completely bunk. Wiz of MF Wiz, Cam of Big C7 Cards, and Mike of SOMD, which stands for Southern Maryland Breaks, were on the podcast. And then it was the first time I went live. I can't believe it took me a year and a half, but military veterans for it was the Veterans Day special in 2024, so about a month and a half ago. Um, and I would love to do more lives. Uh, Trent from Jet Breakers, Dakota Storm Rips, and LT Living with LT. So those were the three-person roundtables, and for my 9 group podcast guests, thank you so much for being part of them. I actually try to set up a part 2 with some of these groups, and it just didn't work out. But like, I'd be glad to have them back, and maybe in different configurations. So 40 solo podcast guests, 9 group podcast guests, 49 total for 100 episodes. And again, it's just a number 100. But with these guests, they are not just a number. And their time and involvement, even for that one episode or multi-part episodes, means so much to me. So I want to really truly from the bottom of my heart say thank you to them and also to you. They're not just a number, you're not just a number. We are actual people, and which just sounds so silly to say, but why do I feel like I have to say that? Because in this social media world that we live in, and the podcast world where this is just my voice, I'm just talking to you. It's like people's clout, their influence, like their status. It's like measured in the number of followers, subscribers, listeners, views, clicks, click through rate, conversion rate, um, percentages, the money, right? Like everything is like these cards with their monetary values. They're just all numbers. It's all like at the end of the day, the numbers don't matter at all. Like they do not matter. What really matters is the genuine connections that we make throughout life. And I know that in making this podcast and having certain people on this podcast, I feel like I personally have benefited by making genuine connections with my guests and with my listeners, you. Maybe not every single one of you, but you matter, I matter, they matter, the guests. And like when you actually meet a person, like again, when I thought about maybe I should just stop the podcast because it was kind of stale, or like, I just feel like it wasn't doing as well as I thought it might be at 100 episodes, which I didn't even know like what to expect. But um I was wondering, like, I had a lot of doubt, self-doubt. I was like, I don't know, like maybe I shouldn't do it. And then you go like in person, you go to like a live, an actual card show. And I remember like in the Mid Atlantic card show, someone came up to me, was like, "Yeah, oh, I listened to your podcast." I was like, "I have no clue who he is." I have no clue. I think his name is Dan or Brandon, and like he kind of came up to me and was like talking to me about the podcast, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, but the thing about the podcast medium is you listen, but there's no like interaction. There's no engagement. You like I know Spotify is trying to do more comments, and I know that in YouTube, because I am going to cross post this, YouTube does allow for comments to be below, but it's not as much of engagement as in like social media with like Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. And of course, some comments can absolutely suck, but there's some great comments too. But when I speak into this, what is it called, a Blue Yeti, or like this microphone, it's like I don't know how much of it is actually landing and how much of it is just like ridiculous because I don't get a lot of feedback. And maybe some of the really strong, good podcasters get a lot of feedback. I don't know. But I know that I've had this email, hobbysthompson at Gmail. Like it's become a secondary hobby email address. I have some things attached to that, like like for like transactions and PayPal and all that stuff. But like when it comes to interactions, like they're really like I feel like the podcast listener is okay just being a listener, and they don't have to constantly validate you or neg you. It's like they're just it is maybe a more of a passive medium, which I feel like I've realized these different platforms and mediums, you have to be okay with certain lack of engagement or certain uh, plethora of engagement. And that's just me like learning in real time. Like I have no training or like I've again, everything I've done has been by the seat of my pants and learning on the fly. And so whether that is creating content on Instagram or podcast medium or doing YouTube, like I try to learn, and I think the times that I've learned the most is when I'm consuming non-hobby content, when it's like that's where I feel like I'm the most creative, or that's when I grow the most, interestingly enough. And that's nothing against the podcast and the hobby that I really do enjoy, but I feel like that's when I'm really learning a lot. Um, but yeah, like like the numbers on a card, like I know the grades matter, like the number, PSA 10 versus PSA 9, and I can't believe we live in a world where PSA 9s are going for less than raw cards, but it's where we are for ultra modern cases mostly. That's what I'm talking about. But um I feel as if, yeah, like you can win in a transaction, but like what does that really ultimately even matter? Like that $20. I mean, I guess maybe if it's life-changing money and you're dabbling in several $1,000 cards that can help, I don't know, pay the mortgage or put the, like people are doing it full time. They have to win as many transactions as possible because that's how they make a living. I certainly have thought a lot about, could this be a possible thing to do, full time? And I just don't think it's possible. I don't think it's feasible for me. But having said that, I think anyone who's a part timer or a zero timer in the hobby, who's just an enthusiast, has had dreams, has had thoughts about could you do it full time? You know, um, Even a fleeting daydream of, oh my gosh, how awesome would it be to own an LCS? These are things that I think all of us, it's okay to think about and to dream about. Having said that, I I just with my life situation, or like just kind of having a young family and like you know just focusing on like just the hobby, and the just the current amount of time I'm spending in the hobby is already way too much, and I've been trying to find a better balance. I love, these solo episodes, much as some people may not like hearing this stuff, like it really is like in a way like a way of self-therapy, of just kind of talking through things. And so I do enjoy it, but I do feel like it could get a little stale. I did think about doing a co-host, and a new type of format, and I realized with having my personal life situation, it wouldn't be fair to try to have someone as a co-host where I would invariably, indubitably, uh, fail them and disappoint them by not being as consistent enough. and it's already hard to schedule solo or group podcasts, but to try to do that on a regular basis for every episode, I think having a co-host would have been really hard. Um, so I do want to say that I considered it strongly, mainly because I'm rarely jealous of people in the hobby. Whether it's easy to be jealous about the cards, right? Because you see a card, and you're like, man, I just want that, and you just want to spend money chasing it. But the thing that I'm probably the most jealous of when I think about people in the hobby is like having better what it looks like to be better relationships, whether it is a spouse who collects with them, or like in like the Boston Hunters case, like a brother-in-law, and me wanting my own LZ because I feel like I'm more of like the kind of Boston card hunter, wear your heart on your sleeve type of person. But other friendships, but I also know that I have a lot of good friends in the hobby, and that if I just wanted to pick any one person to be a co-host or ask them, there is a wide number that I could ask. But the more I just started like thinking about it, I'm like, man, I would really be doing them a disservice by asking and then not being able to kind of like execute like a co-host type of podcast. So I think that's a long-winded way of saying you're stuck with just me if you want to stick it out with me. Um, but I did give it a lot of consideration. I gave consideration to a different type of format. Again, maybe doing more lives, more roundtables. I have an idea for a second podcast, um, or or a backup. I don't even know what to call it, but like I don't know if I can execute it. Um, but I'm not going to rule it out. There's very few things I would actually rule out in this hobby, but that is one thing that I am just thinking more and more about. How much do I want to do YouTube, cross stream or cross platform? How much do I want to go live, have more interaction with the listening audience? Whether, even if there are going to be some people who are not going to be the most savory characters, just dealing with it, right, in real time. So, uh, the most important thing though is I want to continue learn like learning from guests, having them on, sharing their stories. I want to have more collectors on. I when I read the list, I realized I haven't had as many collectors on. I think the dirty little secret about hobby content is that a lot, and when I say a lot, I mean like in my opinion, my personal opinion, like 90 to 95% of collector content in the hobby is just so boring. It's so dry. It's just not for me. It's just not entertaining to me. And so if there was a way, and I don't even know if it's achievable, like I would love to try to make creative collector content. I just don't know. I, I, I haven't figured it out yet. I haven't gotten there, but it's been on my mind a lot. More educational content, more collector focused content. I would love to do that stuff, but we also know that it just there's a reason not a lot of people it doesn't get a lot of traction. It's because a lot of it's just boring. It really is. Educational content too. It's like it's just boring, and I just don't. That I would rather be like I don't know. I would end a podcast. I would stop doing a podcast if I truly felt personally that I was making really dry, really boring content. And I know other people might be like, "You're already doing that, buddy." But for me, when I think about making this podcast, if I have a guest who's just boring me to death, I would have to consider whether I run it or not. But thankfully, I feel like with the people I've asked on that they've been really good. They've been really strong. Even if again, if even if they they are not a fan of this podcast or myself, like at the time when they asked, of course, things are good and we had a podcast. But for the most part, I feel like everyone has an interesting story to tell, at least one or two. And it's a part of my job as the interviewer, as podcaster, is to try to get that story. But I feel that there's just so much. I don't know, like maybe I'm just getting so jaded with the amount of like social media. Instagram. I mean, that's why I took like a 4-month break earlier this year with that and this podcast. But I just, I don't know. There's just so much of it sounds the same. Like I don't know how many times I can watch the same nine 1 minute 60-second short form clip of two people talking about a price of a card and just negotiating it and just having cutscene cut to one person's face, what's your best? Cut to the other person, little joke. Cut to the other person, little joke back. Cut to the other person, one number, and then another number that's half that. Like, and then shaking hands at the end. Like, I don't know what I'm learning from that. Like, what? Why does that? But the thing is, that type of content like crushes it with the algorithm or whatever it is. Like, I don't even like talking about the algorithm, but it's there. Like, I don't know. And there's a lot of YouTube content that I've seen where these people have so many views and subscribers, and I'm just like, I watch it and I'm like, this is why I don't watch stuff that I don't like, because I'll thumb it down or unsubscribe or just not watch it. But I just don't know. There's so much content out there where I'm just like, wow, like that is what passes for hobby content, collector content or educational content, or just kind of like, you know, I don't know. I don't know. So, I think the wheels have fallen. The wheels have fallen off this podcast because now I'm like I should not be criticizing other people's content. Again, if you've gotten to episode 21 in your own podcast, like congrats, mazel, because you are again in the top whatever top 1% of all podcasts. I don't even know what the hobby podcast landscape looks like. My understanding is there's like people who are categorized under hobby and leisure, people are categorized under sports, people are categorized under like travel or professional or whatever it is. Um, but if you're doing it, if you're making content, like I'm sorry, I should not have been saying things are boring. Like keep doing it. Like you're crushing it. Like we're I just want everyone to just like, oh man, I just oh, why is it so hard sometimes? This hobby is like it's like consuming me. Um, I do want to leave all the bad behind in 2024. I don't know how much of that I can do. I am just a human being. I am a person. I am flawed. Please don't I don't know, take everything that I say for word. But look, I already did a giving thanks episode, but I still do want to take the time to say thank you to each and every single one of you who are listening. Mainly, again, on podcasts, because that's what this is, but cross streamed on YouTube and who follow my content and consume my content and like it or comment on Instagram. I've been cross posting a little bit on TikTok. Facebook, I still, I don't know. There's just too much. It's overwhelming. Everything is just too much. But if you've bought a card from me on eBay, if you've bought a card from me at a show or on Instagram, or if you've sold to me, I've had some really cool cards come in. Like thank you, really, truly, thank you so much. You know who you are, and if you can let me know who you are, like if you're listening to this podcast and you've never reached out, I would greatly appreciate it. It would mean so much to me. Um, so yeah, similarly, I want to take a moment again to thank every single guest, every single one of my 49 guests who have been on this podcast in some capacity. Thank you so much. Again, even if we do not talk anymore, even if you've blocked me or I've blocked you, it's all good. Like, really, I look forward to starting fresh in 2025. I really do. So again, whether you're listening to this, I don't know when I'm going to publish this. That's the other thing I should have realized is my outros still suck. There's so many things that I still need to improve on. But have a wonderful, happy New Year, happy 2025. I don't know. You may be listening to this January 1st or uh, January 1st, 2026. I don't know. Right? Once you put it out there, it's out there. But thank you so much for listening. I hope that it's the best for all of us, you, me, the whole hobby. I love this hobby so much. I think that's one thing that no one could really ever say is that I am lacking passion. This has been so much fun. This is like all gravy to me. Like really, this is truly like it's a blessing for any single one of us to even like listen to this podcast. Like I know like there's a saying on what is it? Succession where they're in the back of the limo and they're like even a janitor has an iPhone. I know like everyone has an iPhone or a Google Android or whatever, but just the fact that you are have the time and capacity and the wherewithal to listen to podcasts, to be in the hobby, to spend money, hopefully disposable income that does not affect the family. But like, if you are in this hobby in any capacity, if you're listening to podcasts in any capacity, it is a blessing. It is we should all be so grateful and fortunate. So thank you so much for listening to this one. Because like I used to say in a lot of my intros, you know, to paraphrase Jay Z, you could be anywhere else in the world, but you're here with me. And I stopped saying that for some reason. I don't know why, but I do truly mean it. So thank you so much for listening. And I am, I got to go blow my nose after I end pause here. But thank you so much for listening. Take care of yourself and each other. And let's have an awesome, awesome 2025. Thank you.